Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Chander Lefebvre Boaton, Christopher Ifill, Dan Mike Dawson Silva, Ian Collis, John Dulong, John Griswold, Josias Melendez, Leanne S., Light Relentless, and Teresa. Become a patron today at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Well, it's a good month or two before the big day. We've I realize we've got a lot of people celebrating a lot of different things out there. But of course, when I say the big day, I do mean December the 25th. But I decided, you guys, you kids out there listening to Elwood City Limits, you've been good. So I think that you deserve a bit of a treat. So we have a returning guest who is it's a gift for me, too. It's a little bit of a gift for me. You got to take care of yourself around Christmas as well. So I decided to give a gift for everybody. So my name is Will Young. Welcome to this episode of Elwood City Limits. Lucas, not able to join us this week, but filling in, pinch hitting for the second time, is return guest host and friend of the show. It's JV. What's up, JV?
Not much, man. I saw that y'all were getting to episode 9, so I was already prepared in the back of my head. Because I think if I remember correctly, the last time I was a guest host, it was also on the penultimate episode of the season. So here I am. You called. Really excited to go ahead and break down some Arthur with you yet again. And stoked to be able to talk to you a little bit before Best of the Nest. I'm sure that TriCast, if hopefully all of our schedules can align, is going to be really swell. But, man, we have a gut punch of episodes to deal with today as well.
Well, hey, you said it there, so might as well. I've been kind of hinting that you would be back at some point, so might as well put it all out on Front Street. Yes, our plan is to do a massive TriCast. I like that. TriCast of the opening to Season 6, Best of the Nest. It's a double feature, and I really couldn't think of anyone better than esports caster JV to join us for that one. So that is the plan, and I'm really looking forward to that one. But before we get there, we've still got a couple of episodes left before we can leave Season 5 in the dust. JV, what have you been up to since we talked to you last?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of cooking in the background that, unfortunately, I'm not really at liberty to talk about right now. But fingers crossed, if everything goes well, by the next time you hear me on your show, I'll have a little bit more to reveal. Since that time, I guess, some things I can talk about. I've been a guest on another podcast as well, which has been really swell. And yeah, so far just really enjoying married life more than anything else, and catching up on a massive backlog of games. I don't know about you, Will, but right now I feel like I have the godlike combo of gaming right now, right? I got my PS4, I got my Switch, and my wife built this beastly PC, which I have commandeered, and now I have access to several people's Steam libraries. So right now I'm knees deep in some Sonic Mania, baby. Just trying to knock that out.
Man.
Oh, yeah. You never played Sonic Mania?
Oh, no, I did. I believe when it came out last year, Lucas and I kind of talked about it because I got that pretty soon after it came out. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I think it is a tremendous one of those Sonic games. So I'm hoping you're enjoying it more than I did.
I think there was a moment in the game. At first I was just kind of playing around. I was like, all right, this is fun, nostalgic, it's pretty chill. But then there's this one section of the game that kind of comes out of nowhere, and the difficulty amps up accordingly as well. And I think it's the first, holy crap moment of the game, right? And I think since that time, that probably happened maybe 2 hours or so into the game, it's really got a good vice grip on me right now. So I think I'm approaching the end zone, and I'm having a great time with it so far. But honestly, I've just been playing some great games, man. I think a little bit after we talked, I got to play this one game called Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which man, yeah, that I think might be definitely the best game I've played this year. Even though I think it came out a couple years ago. And one of the best games I think I've ever played as well. Wow, that was incredible. I just beat Doom a couple nights ago. Also,
yes,
so,
yeah.
It's been good, man. It's a weird mix of games to say the least, right? I got Sonic on the PC. I got Hollow Knight on the Switch. I'll probably crank up some Shovel Knight or some Firewatch next.
Oh man,
we're all over the place, baby. I'm loving it.
You're speaking my language here. It's funny. It sounds like you're catching up on a lot of last year's games as we end off on this year.
Man, that's the pro tip, right? I'm not out. Look. Everybody out here playing Spider-Man, all right? I'm out here playing Batman Arkham Knight because I picked it up for $3. Okay?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, that's the strat.
That's what you want to pick that up for, I'd say. $3 is good.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with you. I think that sometimes it can get to be a little bit of a race within video games. They're just like, okay, the new thing came out. I have to play it now before, I hear about it from anybody else. But I'm more, excuse me, I tend to swing towards what you're talking about, because I think the important thing is it's not to, tell other people that you played something. It's to have fun playing the thing yourself. So, I think it's actually a really good idea, especially because now those games are going to be a great deal cheaper than what they were. So I'm glad that you got to them at all. Hellblade was one of my absolute favorite games of last year. It's a favorite of mine in general, kind of like you said as well. Doom is awesome. I'm considering rebuying that because I actually traded it in last year, but I've been wanting to get back to playing it again. But I will say I did something I normally don't do recently, and I bought two pretty new games that I've been kind of doing a tag team with, Spider-Man and God of War.
Ooh, I have God of War sitting right behind me on a little shelf. I have a buddy and I, we both never had a PlayStation. I was always a Nintendo Xbox kid, and he's been PC Master Race, I guess, since he came out of the womb. So we've been slowly catching up on the backlog of awesome Sony exclusives. Like, let's see, we beat The Last of Us earlier this year for the first time, and wow, that actually is, I take it back, that's the best game I played this year.
Speaking of my favorite games.
Yeah. And right after that, we knocked out Shadow of the Colossus.
Speaking of my favorite games, hello.
Yeah. It's been a great session for JV, okay? 2018 is the year where I became woke on PlayStation games, all right? Let me just say, we're going through Uncharted as well, so we beat Uncharted 1. We're going to tackle, I think, Ori and the Blind Forest next before doing Uncharted 2 and 3 and 4.
Okay.
And God of War, of course, as well. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been some good sessions, man.
You're hitting the highlights there, so I think that your direction leaves nothing to be desired. So that's good, and I hope that you have some more good sessions to come. Well, it's great to have you back, JV, and I'm going to get you into it here. Before we get into the episode at large, we do have an email to address here. elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com is where our lovely listeners send us all kinds of feedback, and where we can read it on the air. So this one comes in from Dylan. The email is called TV Time, and I'm interested to kind of get your thoughts on this. So, excuse me. I also have coming off from a chest cold, so I'll try to cough away from the mic so that I don't scramble anybody's ears.
Am I getting some Chocolate Rain vibes real quick? Like I move away from the mic to cough?
Yeah. Some stay dry and others feel the pain. And the pain is sounds like that. Dylan says, so last week we on the show talked about catching Pokemon at a certain time on TV. Lucas and I were talking about having to get home at 4:30 because that's what time it was on. Dylan says that reminded me of my childhood. I'm glad Pokemon is on Netflix now, so I don't have to wait till 4:30 for it to be on. This also reminds me of my adulthood. I'm 24, and I still bug my parents by telling them Jeopardy is on at 7:30, even though I record it on the PVR. And he also has a joke here from. I'll continue here. When I was a kid, however, I remember this one time I had to catch my favorite episode of that 70s show where the gang crosses the U.S.-Canada border to get beer. The infamous Tommy Chong line, "No, you get out of Canada, man," that he says to Dave Thomas and Joe Flaherty after they tell the gang to get out of Canada themselves is hilarious. To make a long story short, I missed the episode. So talking about kind of catching shows when we were younger and now that we're older. Speaking of which, Jeopardy on Netflix, that is a game changer. I love it.
Wow. Yeah, I just noticed it actually last night that on my next Netflix queue, it was Alex Trebek's Smiling Face, and I was super stoked about it. I can't wait to catch up on those.
It's fantastic. It's such a great resource to have because it's the easiest casual television there is. It's just 20 minutes straight up. And the Jeopardy that's on Netflix is like the Tournament of Champions, so they all know what they're doing, and it's like high-level play. So it's fun to watch, and it's fun to play yourself. It's perfect for Netflix, and I can't believe it took them this long.
Oh, man. We're talking about Jeopardy. We talked about games. We might as well bring it full circle. Have you seen that clip of the Jeopardy category about games? And they managed to get, I think, every single one wrong.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, it's so brutal. It's so brutal to watch. Oh, my. Oh, my.
I'll have to see if I can get an audio clip from that. So in terms of Dylan's email, by the way, Dylan, thank you for your email. elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. JV, was there ever a show whose time zone that you still remember from having to catch it as a kid? So Lucas and I grew up in the same area, so our times were the same. But since you're in the United States, I wonder if there was anything different on your end.
It's hard to say, honestly. Man, there's just so many great shows back then, especially coming back after school. And I remember it was pretty common for us to come back after school and maybe throw on an episode of Recess that would just be on the TV. I had a great time with that, for sure. For me, I think, though, most of my television watching, aside from Arthur, which I'd watch pretty much every day when I would come back from school, would be more centered around Saturday morning cartoons. Because especially when I was growing up, man, there were some bangers, right? Like Jackie Chan Adventures, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond. Ooh! I will tell you, I don't know. I think for us it was CW33. That was the channel for us that had all the good like Warner shows, I suppose.
Yeah.
Was there like an equivalent of that in Canada as well, or was it also CW33?
So we got, if you had cable, then you could get the American channels doing their. You were never really short for children's programming on a Saturday morning because like our local broadcaster CBC had one, although it was kind of a bit more focused towards younger kids. Then there was YTV, which was literally youth television, which had their Saturday morning stuff. Fox Kids was the big one. We got the feed from Rochester, New York, over in Nova Scotia, and then also ABC's One Saturday Morning, which had your Recess and Pepper Ann and all that kind of stuff.
Man, some great theme songs with that too. I bet if I just started singing Pepper Ann, you'd break into a little song and dance right now.
Who's that girl?
That's
what's
about as
her
far as we
name?
can
Is she
go.
cool? Is she lame? Oh, you talk about what's her name? Pepper Ann. Oh yeah. Listen, if there's one of several YouTube holes that I can get lost in, it's cartoon intros. So.
Oh yeah. I think okay. So I'm just gonna throw one out there that I think is very slept on.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Xiaolin Showdown.
Okay, I think I was a bit outside the age range for Xiaolin Showdown. I never watched it.
Ah, bummer. See, that makes me feel a little depressed because I know I'm older than you, maybe by a year. So I was definitely out of the age range of it, but it was still a lot of fun to watch. All right.
Yeah.
I still remember Gong Yi Tampai. All right. It's no Yumo Gui Gui Fight Eat Zhao from Jackie Chan Adventures, but it still got the job done. Okay.
Sure.
It still got the job done.
Yumo Fui Fui White Eats Zhao. Yeah,
Ooh.
I'd watched just enough of Jackie Chan Adventures to have that emblazoned in my mind forever.
Hey, I'll tell you what. If come April 1st, 2019, you decide that the April Fool's joke is going to be y'all pivoting to a Jackie Chan Adventures show, just hit me up. All right, we'll talk about some talismans. We'll talk about some legendary animals. We'll make it happen. We'll talk about chupacabras, okay? That's season 2, season 3 nonsense, all right? I'm ready. I'm ready.
Well, I'll have to keep that in my back pocket for a little something. I've already got a plan for April Fool's 2019, so don't you guys worry about that. All right, after much ado, I think it's about time we start talking about Arthur. Not that I mind at all. It's great to have you back here, JV. And the episodes that we're talking about today, it's interesting. I wish I could remember exactly which episode that you and I did before. I was trying to look it up on the sly at the beginning here, but my memory failed me.
I can help you out here. So we did What Is That Thing, which was the Bobbin episode. That was the first one that we covered.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like the second one that we covered was the one where Arthur and Buster are each other for the day.
Wow, that was
with Element X.
That was literally the ninth. You're right, the ninth episode of season 4. That feels like so long ago because that came about with through Twitter DMs with you and I. That's how we met, and that feels like I would have guessed that was like earlier this year, but like that was literally 10 full episodes of the show ago.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some filibusters in between, but 10 episodes ago, and like clockwork, here we are.
Well, it all works out for a reason, doesn't it? So today we're talking about Just Desserts and The Big Dig, neither of which I really remembered from the name, but once we kind of got started here, it kind of to roll back into my head. Just Desserts begins with Arthur reading what we assume is a scare your pants off book because he's marveling at how a kid was swallowed whole, bones and all. But no, he's actually reading fairy tales. And this is Arthur's first realization as an 8-year-old that, old school fairy tales are pretty grim. No pun intended.
Yeah, man. So those old school fairy tales, they go hard, all right? For lack of a better word to describe them, they really do go hard. And you're kind of surprised, I think, just because so many of them are adapted into, I guess, Disney movies.
Yeah.
That you think that it's all happy and cheerful. But really, there are some really dark and twisted stories in the world of fairy tales, to say the least.
Kids, don't read the original Little Mermaid fairy tale if you're feeling down or depressed. Like, it's not going to help.
Yeah, not the best play.
No.
Definitely not the best play, all right? I'd say go ahead, cuddle up with some the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Never stops me from having a good time, all right? I know what I'm in for with that ride.
Can't go wrong with the Seuss man. He won't.
You really can't.
He won't lead you astray.
But even the Seuss man can lead you astray, too. I was reading some stuff about his personal life, and didn't he have an affair with a woman whenever his wife was dying of cancer? I was like, come on, man, Dr. Seuss, really?
Well, okay, so that sucks. Don't get me wrong, but come on, you can't. It's like you're not. It's not like you're gonna read The Cat in the Hat and then all of a sudden, it's there. Dr. Seuss includes his mistress in the storyline. It's not exactly going to affect your reading of the Lorax to know.
Yeah,
that, so.
Maybe it was part of, obviously Dr. Seuss, I think that's just his pen name, right?
Yes.
So maybe with that he had like a split identity thing where, he would be in his old self whenever he was with his dying wife and Dr. Seuss with his mistress.
Dr.
This is a weird tangent. This is a really weird tangent.
Dr. Seuss and Mr. Geisel over here.
Ooh.
It's a little strange. Speaking of weird references to things, speaking of weird tangents, we get a couple of like movie references here because Arthur is illustrating what fairy tales can be like. We get a scene of like a giant pig talking to a king in his book, and then the pig looks at the camera and says, "And I was doing this hundreds of years before, babe." Weird shot at Babe 7 years after it came out.
Yeah, I think that the pig from the fairy tale, being the OG hipster that he is, I appreciated it.
And in this one where this two-headed giant is menacing this knight, they do the bit of like, I say we put him in a soup. I say we put him in a casserole or something. And then the knight says, I say we let him go, which is a reference to Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I did not catch that. Wow, that's so great. Oh, definitely the beginning of this episode had me grinning from ear to ear. It was a really great start there with so many great references.
And then Arthur decides to read us his own fairy tale about what changed his mind. about reading fairy tales. Before we started recording in earnest, you were kind of telling me we were kind of swapping wedding planning stories because, JV, you were recently married, and I'm going to be married early next year. So when I started watching this episode, knowing that you and I were going to talk about it, I knew that we were going to come back to wedding planning because that's where this episode starts. Dad Reed is making a humongous wedding cake, which, and I quote, is a cake with chocolate fudge brownie cake with a vanilla custard filling topped with butterscotch icing and crumbled peanut butter toffee. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
I can feel the diabetes kicking in right now just from the description alone.
Oh,
what an incredible masterpiece!
Take me, Lord. I mean, that's I need to figure out how we can spin this into our wedding now. I don't think Jenna would really go for it, but I gotta try, man. It's just this all seems none of that is a losing bet. The only thing close is like vanilla custard in a cake, but as long as I know it's there, then like game on, man.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how much that couple paid Papa Reed to make that cake happen, right? Because I'm sure you know, it's a huge cake. I'm sure you know, wedding cakes, they're no joke. No, they are serious dough.
No, and he's a small business, so he could really charge for the ingredients he would need for that. He'd need chocolate cake. He'd need chocolate fudge brownie cake mix, vanilla custard, butterscotch icing, peanut butter toffees. It's wild.
Man. It's a lot going for it. So
what was your wedding cake?
I was going to ask you the same thing because we actually opted out of doing a traditional wedding cake. Oh. Instead, what we did was we went to Nothing Bundt Cakes and had them take care of everything. So they basically gave my wife and I like a big cake that would be used for the cutting and whatnot. That would feed the two of us. And then all of our guests were able to get their own individual Nothing Bundt cake. Which ended up saving us a ton of money and actually was super delicious as well. That's the one thing about wedding cakes is unless you spend a lot, most of the time you're left with a fairly bland slice of cake at the end of the day that you paid way too much money for. But everybody at our wedding really loved our cakes a lot. It definitely made it a very memorable, and at the same time we were able to save a good amount of money as well. So 2 birds, 1 stone. Efficiency, baby.
That sounds entirely reasonable. We're actually... so Jenna is coordinating cake tastings very soon. So she was asking me what type of icing and what type of filling I would like to try. So that's the best cake you can buy comes with free taste testings. So looking forward to that.
So I'm a chocolate man through and through. All right, and that goes double for the cakes. All right, I'm all about that chocolate cake. What are you, like a red velvet guy? What are we looking at?
I'm much more vanilla, but there's not a whole lot of cakes that I will turn down necessarily. Nothing wrong with chocolate, nothing wrong with red velvet. But vanilla...
What about a carrot cake? Would you turn down a carrot cake?
I would not, and if Lucas were here, he would pipe in that he believes carrot cake is the greatest cake known to man.
Man, okay. All right. I'd like to think I'm pretty westernized at this point.
Okay.
But carrot cake, I think, is one of those things. It's carrot cake and mayonnaise. It's the final frontier of keeping me from being fully westernized. And I can't do it, man. I just can't. I'm sorry. I'm not on the carrot cake hype train, all right? I'm a simple man. And look, I know being Indian, my culture is not necessarily known for having top-tier desserts. I'll give that to the West all day long, no questions asked. All right, we got gulabja, which is pretty chill, a little too sweet for my taste, but for the most part, the West dominates the dessert game. But I can't do carrot cake, man. I've tried so many times. I like my brownies. I like chocolate cake. Some red velvet cake. That's cool too. But I just can't do carrot cake, man. I don't know what it is.
Is it the taste? Is it the texture? I know the texture can be a little weird.
Yeah, it's a bit of column A, bit of column B, And Lucas is probably listening to this and being like, do we really want to try cast with this guy? Because he has some questionable cake tastes, all right? We can do, I'm sure we'll see eye to eye on like hip-hop and anime and all that, but cakes is probably where we deviate just a tad, my friend, just a tad.
Just enough to keep it interesting. So Arthur's got this cake on the brain. His dad won't let him have any of it before it goes off to the wedding, and I don't blame him. In fact, Arthur is seeing the cake in his dreams. Essentially, he kind of nods off in class. They're watching a documentary about undersea life, and it just subtly works its way in there as the narrator goes. There's all kinds of animals that live on the ocean floor: the sea cucumber, the jellyfish, and the wedding cake. The stone cold delivery on that made that. It was hilarious.
Man, I know that we've seen earlier in this season that it's Buster that has this natural knack for being able to consume a lot of food, but Arthur is the sleeper hit whenever it comes to just being a fatty on demand. All right, I'm telling you right now,
it's true. In fact, sometimes characters will point out about how he's a little bit pouchy because. And we see it in this episode. He's got a little bit of a tummy, a little bit of a fat kid streak to him. And hey, we recognize our own here. That's what made me the man I am today. Appetites like this one. But Arthur's crazed about this wedding cake, and Grandma Thora is coming over to take care of him and DW while Dad and Mom go to the wedding. Arthur's talking about the wedding cake with Buster, and they're just like, Grandma Thora's going to be cooking for us tonight. And Buster goes, that cheesy tuna noodle thing that apparently Grandma Thora makes, which I don't know about you. That sounds okay. I'd try that. I used to eat tuna helper a lot, which is basically that cheesy tuna noodle thing.
All right. In addition to carrot cake and mayonnaise, I'm going to add tuna helper to that list of things that I just can't get behind yet, as westernized as I am. All right, I'm not about it. I'm not about it. But I will say, kind of talking about this, I do appreciate some of the continuity in Arthur so far. Right, we've gotten to the point where Arthur has gone from once having a mindset where his dad's cooking was considered really weird and kind of strange and he wasn't about it, to now Arthur actually really appreciating his father for the exquisite chef that he is. And on the same token, we've seen this continued theme that Grandma Thora, despite having a very culinarily talented child, cannot cook to save her life. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the big caveat. I think even if I was a tuna helper guy, I still wouldn't trust it because I just don't trust Thora's cooking. All right. I trust her banner making. I trust pretty much anything she does except for her cooking.
That's a great point. So Arthur decides to cut her off at the pass. He's not going to eat anything that Grandma Thora makes, so he buys himself a huge haul of candy. He's got like chocolate bars, nougat. He's got like fruit roll, something called a Footsie roll, which is Tootsie Roll, and a bunch of candy. So what are you thinking in terms of what this candy haul costs?
Man, that's a great question, right?
This has got to be. I don't think I would go as far as $20.
No,
but
it's got to be at least 10.
I'd say definitely 10, getting around the $15 mark, maybe a little bit below.
And that's a lot of action figures in Arthur money.
Yeah,
right. I think he said something about $15. It's like 5 action figures, right?
3 action figures, and that was true.
All right,
that was true at the time. $15 back in 1998 could get you 3 non-deluxe action figures.
Rookie mistake here, all right? He should have taken that money, saved it, and pulled a JV. Go ahead and buy yourself Horizon Zero Dawn, the complete edition, for $15, okay? That's the strat. I'm not going to lie. When I saw his candy spread, Will, I really expected that he'd be smart about this, and maybe he'd at least ration everything out, right? That's what I was thinking, that this was candy that would last him throughout the evening because he would find ways to forego the wasteland that is Thora's cooking.
Yeah, I mean, it's he's basically just having candy for dinner instead. He's trying to fill himself up so that he'll have an excuse for not wanting to eat Grandma Thora's cooking. But then it turns out that Dad actually left them like a fully cooked turkey dinner for them to eat.
Man, coming in clutch, I guess, with the timing being just after Thanksgiving for us in the States.
Yeah. Yeah. How did that?
Yeah.
How did your Thanksgiving go?
It went really well. This was actually the first joint Thanksgiving that we had with my wife's family as well as my family. Typically, the way that it would work would be in years prior, I'd go over and spend the afternoon with her family, and then the evening with my family, because they'd usually do like a Thanksgiving lunch, and my family would do a Thanksgiving dinner. But it was really cool just having everybody under one roof and enjoying a meal together. And best of all, I only have half a tray of leftovers left, okay? I've been very strategic with my Thanksgiving leftover consumption, all right? I've made sure to eat the food that would spoil quickest first, okay? So your boy's going to be okay. If for whatever reason I'm conked out on food poisoning and I won't be able to make the TriCast, I'll let you know. But right now I feel like I got a good strategy in place for taking out those leftovers.
Very good. I'm glad to hear it was a success. I'm jealous of everybody getting to eat turkey, but don't worry. In a month's time, I'll be back on the turkey wagon once again.
See, turkey's kind of a split thing in the States, right? Obviously, it's a big tradition at Thanksgiving, but especially when you're looking at Twitter, there's a lot of folks who are very turkey agnostic, I suppose, or more so, it's like they'll take turkey, but only because you feel like you can't have Thanksgiving without it, and they much rather prefer something like ham, right?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And I don't know. I think maybe I'm just spoiled because my mom makes some great turkey, right? But I feel like it's a good time, especially if you have the turkey and it's done well, right? I can always appreciate a great ham, right? A great ham I can have literally any time during the year and I'll be fine with it. But especially during Thanksgiving, man, like I feel like there's nothing that really hits the spot quite like that nice turkey.
100% agreed. And hey, for everybody who doesn't like turkey, you can just give me yours and I'll have it for you. Happy.
Is there a Canadian equivalent of Thanksgiving, by the way? I was trying to think.
We have our own Thanksgiving, but it's just it's in October.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a month earlier, and it doesn't really have the the mythos of like the pilgrims and what have you. It's just kind of a thing. I don't really know why it's different. I've never looked into it.
Okay, I don't want to say it's like Leif Erikson based or anything like that because I really don't know anything when it comes to exploring the New World outside of what I learned in American school. But what's I guess what's kind of like the story there, because Canada's interesting, because I'm sure that there's probably some folks who came via the land bridge from Russia to Alaska, right? I'm sure there's some folks who first came, but then what kind of explorers do y'all know that kind of first kind of opened up the gates and made Canada what it is today? Do you have any insight there?
Oh boy, I feel like I'm back in school again. Gosh, I can't say that I know. I'm sorry. I'm very
it's okay, Will.
I'm very ignorant.
That's why you're hosting a podcast about Arthur, and you're not on Jeopardy right now. Okay, don't worry about it.
It's absolutely true. I will tell you this though, fresh from the Wikipedia Gazette here. Thanksgiving is in Canada. It's more of a general celebration of the harvest time. So we kind of have it in October, in the middle of the fall.
I appreciate that. Now, the last question I have about that is, when do you find that it is acceptable to start putting up Christmas decorations? Because I very staunchly believe that it has to be post-Thanksgiving. I feel like a lot of people try to do it like right after Halloween's over, and I'm just like, can we just chill? There's like one more little holiday in between, and I feel like maybe since Canada does their celebration a month earlier, that might change those optics up a bit.
So what the big controversy about that in Canada is that in November we have Remembrance Day on the 11th, which is to celebrate and honor our. It's basically our version of Veterans Day that you guys would have in the United States. And there's there's a lot of controversy about basically how to honor Remembrance Day, and one of them is that a lot of people believe you shouldn't put up your Christmas decorations before November the 11th, and then after that it's kind of fair game. I'm more the type of person that would, once December the 1st rolls around, it's fine. But then, I've seen Christmas decorations up in people's houses for the last week or so. And I'm like, I guess that's fine. It just all seems a little soon. It feels like we're stretching Christmas out to a month and a half.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm totally cool with just dedicating December to the holidays, right? But just seeing people putting up Christmas wreaths as they're taking down their Halloween decorations, it's a little too much. All right, we we need to chill just a little bit, I think, on that front.
I agree. So at the end of dinner, Grandma surprises them by having a little bit of extra wedding cake that Dad saved. And Arthur is already fit to burst, but he instead manages to fit 2 whole slices of cake, and he is a hurtin' dude. And I was just like, Arthur, all you got to do is save it for later. Let that other stuff digest, and then just enjoy it when you're well.
Like I said, Arthur, our low-key resident fatty on demand, all right? He could have just, they baited us so hard with that shot, too, because you see him just being like, maybe just one piece, right? And he's taking this tiny little bite. And it's actually DW that comes in and says, you should have had 2 pieces of cake. Like, wow. Can we talk about how many calories Arthur has consumed in this brief window, all right? This is dangerously close to epic mealtime levels of caloric intake. This man needs to chill.
Speaking of which, Resident Fatty on Demand, I'm changing my Twitter profile right now. So Arthur has a huge stomach ache, and Grandma Thora decides to read him fairy tales, which Arthur kind of balks at initially, but he eventually kind of falls asleep as Grandma Thora is reading him the story of Hansel and Gretel. And we get this extended dream sequence where Arthur imagines himself in DW, mainly in the story of Hansel and Gretel, and they're in like period-appropriate clothing. Arthur has this like very short and revealing lederhosen on, and DW has a great line here where Arthur's complaining about like how short his shorts are, and DW is like, all I get is this dress with lace trim. It's like wearing a tablecloth.
Yeah, I love the costume work that they went with for this entire sequence. Everything, honestly, especially from a theming and costuming perspective, is very well done, and I definitely have to give the whole team a big shout-out on that front.
So they go through the scary woods. They find the candy house from Hansel and Gretel, and it's overseen by a particular favorite design of mine. It's Mr. Ratburn as like the witch in Hansel and Gretel, and basically it's Ratburn in a black witch cloak, and he's got the long Ratburn nose, except it's kind of drooping downward, and it's got a boil on it, and just speaking in a very like old crone voice. I loved it.
Yeah, something about witches, man. When I play Overwatch, I think one of my favorite skins is Witch Mercy.
Ooh,
and I'm telling you, when I'm watching Arthur, I'm all about that witch rapper, all right? That's the alt skin that we all needed. Especially for this season. It was so perfect. So perfect.
Once we get 10 patrons on our Patreon, we got to invite you for some Overwatch games onto our Discord server.
Bro, I will dust off the PlayStation. I will dust the sticks off that, and I will be the tank main that your party probably doesn't deserve. Y'all could do a lot better than me, honestly. But we'd have a good time regardless.
I haven't played Overwatch in like a year and a half, but I'm willing to if people pay us. Patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. We also get a good line from Arthur here as like the witches regarding Hansel and Gretel. Arthur's just like, your house is very tastefully decorated. A real yes, very good. So we do a little bit of the the Hansel and Gretel thing, although we get a little bit of a twist in it of just like Arthur compliments the house, and then the Ratburn witch is like, wait until you see the mall. Okay, can't do that voice.
See, I feel like that maybe, honestly, the voice was so to character. Like, I bet that the voice actor did the same thing after that voice as well, honestly.
They actually literally go to a like mall that is made out of candy, and it's great. The witch is like taking Arthur's measurement with a tape and then goes to buy an oven, and then somehow Arthur and DW end up caged in the witch's house because they followed her back after they literally went on an errand for an oven they could fit into.
Yeah, Arthur, not really the sharpest crayon in the toolbox, if you will, this episode. Definitely not. It started off with the poor rationing decisions with the candy, the poor intake of the cake, and now literally following the person that's about to cook them alive. Not the best play, my dude.
But they are saved eventually by, as another fairy tale intrudes on Arthur's dream, the Tibble twins push the Ratburn witch into the oven, and but it turns out it's actually 7 Tibble twins. They are the I forget what they call it, like if they're just the 7 Tibbles, but it's obviously like the seven dwarves, and their names are pesky, whiny, grouchy, angry, noisy, creepy, and stinky, which is like all 7 of my moods. Like I can be one of those things at any given time.
Yeah, that's man. How much? What is it if it's 7? It's not septa, is it?
It is no, septa. I want to say is okay. Hang on.
9, because that's like September.
Gosh, I feel like I should know this because it's like hexagon. Hex is 5.
Okay, I'm gonna look into the Wikipedia Gazette as well.
7-sided shape is called a heptagon.
Heptagon. Okay. So Heptamom confirmed, I guess, in this universe.
Yes, because the Tibbles all think that DW is their princess Doe White, and DW is like, no, it stands for Dora Winifred, and they all carry her away because it's nap time, and she asks Arthur to run and get help. And this part is great. It's like where the fiction of the. Of course, it's Arthur's dream, so it doesn't really have to make sense. But the fiction of the fairy tale world breaks for a second as Arthur, still in his Hansel gear, like runs around the sugar bowl looking for someone to help, and then Binky is there to roast him on sight with the best lines in this episode.
Oh man, the double roast as well. Just when you think it's over, he comes back for seconds, and it's just so good. It's so brutal. I love it.
Yeah. So he sees Arthur in his getup, and he just goes, "Hey, nice pants, Arthur. Where's the flood?" And then Arthur finds a Red Riding Hood cape on a bench that he can put on just so he can hide what he's wearing. And then Binky sees that, and he's like, "Oh, great. What are you, super doofus?" It's like Showtime at the Apollo here. Arthur's getting eaten alive.
Yeah, I feel like if for whatever reason in the Arthur universe they decide to have a roast of a character, Binky would absolutely crush that show, both literally and figuratively.
100%. I would pay pay-per-view money to see that. And honestly, the humor continues here because Arthur goes to Grandma Thora's house, and then. It's so absurd, like the next minute and a half here, because he goes to visit her, and what it is, it's Grandma Thora in bed, except it's actually the wedding cake dressed up as Grandma Thora, a la Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. So it's literally just an anthropomorphic cake that sounds like Grandma Thora, and we even do the what chocolatey eyes you have or something. It's like, and what creamy skin, and
oh man, she's like it's this new moisturizer I've been using.
And yeah, she's got this weird effect to her voice. It's just like, it's my new moisturizer. Sounds like a Star Wars villain. And then the best part is we lead up to all of this, and of course, in Red Riding Hood, it's like, all the better to eat you with is the line. But with the wedding cake, it's all the better to be eaten by you. And the wedding cake sucks itself into Arthur through his mouth. And it's so funny. It just doesn't make any sense. It was the sight of him necking that entire wedding cake, and then he immediately gets like super cartoon fat and like doubles over. And then just to top it off, DW comes into the house and is just like Arthur, you ate grandma. And then Arthur's like, it wasn't grandma, it was that wedding cake.
That whole sequence is hilarious and terrifying at the same time. Like the noise that it makes whenever the cake is being sucked into Arthur,
yeah,
and everything. Oh man, what a sequence! What a sequence!
I can't believe they thought of this, and it's just, oh my god, I love it so much because it's just so out there. This is. I don't want to dwell on this too much because I feel like I do it a lot. Like talking about how I'm waiting for Arthur to get weird. This is the kind of weird I've been waiting for. Like, I think about this a lot.
I think it's the second instance of Arthur and Cake being I guess so violently paired together. Like I'm thinking about that. I think that one sequence a couple of seasons ago, where Arthur's eyeing this piece of cake in the fridge, and he hears the door open, and he thinks that it's his parents, but it's actually DW, and he manages to shove the entire cake into his mouth in one go. So this is kind of almost, in some ways, when I was watching this fairy tale sequence, I was reminded of that, except the way that it's done, it's more so instead of Arthur shoving the cake in, it's the cake shoving itself into Arthur. So really cool little parallels, I think.
Arthur has a real weakness for cake. It's like one of his favorite snacks, it seems. And he just loves just necking them whole, like game respect game here. And Arthur's dream ends with Buster the Woodcutter coming in, and he is going to play the role of the woodcutter in Red Riding Hood, but there's no wolf to cut open, so instead he has his axe. He's going to cut Arthur open because he thinks he could be either a grandma-eating wolf disguised as Arthur or a grandma-eating alien disguised as a wolf disguised as Arthur.
Classic Buster, going that extra distance. And I think that this sequence almost implies this tragic end where Arthur is essentially butchered by his best friend, which... wow, what a way to wake up, let me tell you.
It definitely is pretty, the implied violence is pretty scary. And then that, of course, Arthur wakes up screaming, and he still has a pretty big stomach ache. So Grandma Thora gives him some Pepto and puts him to bed and hopes that and says that everything will kind of work itself out. Arthur's fairy tale dream continues that night because he imagines himself in Jack and the Beanstalk, except instead of magic beans, it's the pills that Grandma Thora gave him. Like I guess they might be Tums even or something like that. And they grow into a beanstalk. And here is, again, kind of another really surreal sight. Arthur climbs the beanstalk up to the clouds, and he's going to steal a Confuse the Goose, like a real-life silly goose that he wants to bring back to DW. And then he becomes menaced by a manifestation of all the food he's ever eaten in his 8 years of existence. And it's all kind of piled on top of each other in the shape of a giant man. It's the design on this, it's wild. And it really they really had to do some outside-the-box thinking for this, because you've got its head is a hamburger. There are parts of it that are made out of sausage links. Parts of its arms are like corn cobs.
It's a good, healthy American diet right there. That's what that's looking like, all right? Honestly, I'm surprised that... I think the one thing that surprised me the most, aside from the outstanding character design here, is that was all the food that Arthur had eaten in his entire life, and not just all the food that he had eaten, say, in that year. Because, I mean, we've seen Arthur pig out on plenty of occasions, all right? I wouldn't be surprised if that giant was even taller than it actually was in that sequence.
Could be. Or there could be some internal parts that we don't see.
Ooh, yeah, great point. Weird body fact. I'm pretty sure that your small intestine, when it's all stretched out, is supposed to be ridiculously long. Like, it doesn't make sense how long your small intestine actually is.
Yeah.
So.
I've heard that before too, but I don't want to make guesses as to exactly how big, because I'm sure I'd be wrong. Weird animation note that I've noticed this since I was a kid. There's a period from when Arthur escapes from the giant to when the giant starts climbing down the beanstalk, where the animation all of a sudden, the frame rate picks up and it gets a lot quicker, and then it just eventually stops. Like, it's maybe a 20-second period where that happens, and I've never been able to understand why.
Maybe it's just to make the whole scene feel a little bit more high stakes and fast paced and tense. It's definitely a lot. I want to harken back to the reason that Arthur climbs the beanstalk in the first place, which, by the way, I don't know, Will, if you do any rock climbing yourself, but Arthur's doing some serious bouldering here, all right? No harness necessary, just beanstalking it up to get up there. But he takes the goose apparently because he wanted to replace the Mary Moo Cow set and I think another toy that he traded for the magic beads, right? So that's why he's coming down the stalk with this very confused goose. And just, I think, the following sequence of events that happen with Arthur and DW and a surprise character reintroduction, I think, makes it for some great television.
Yes, I think that is indeed worth noting. And then Buster the Woodcutter comes back because he's a licensed and accredited beanstalk cutter. And and of course he cuts down the beanstalk with a giant on it. Arthur wakes up, gives a huge burp, and he feels all better.
Yeah, man, when Buster actually reaches into his pocket and pulls out the license for being a beanstalk cutter. Oh man,
it's a nice,
way too good.
It's a nice little addition, and that's pretty much the end of the episode. We go back to the framing device. Arthur is reading this story, finishing the story. He says that Arthur never ate candy again and lived happily ever after. And then he starts eating a chocolate bar, and he's like, "Well, maybe the happily ever after part will come true."
Fair. I think it's fair to Arthur's character, right? He learned his lesson, but maybe not as much as he would like us to believe that he did.
Know your limitations, but also, everything in moderation, including moderation.
Well said.
Before we move into the second half of the episode, let's hear a little bit from Lucas.
And now a word from me, Lucas Mancini of Elwood City Limits. Don't forget to chat with your Elwood City Limits pals on social media with facebook.com/Elwood City Limits or at ECL Podcast on Twitter. We also have a Tumblr, elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com, and an Instagram at Elwood City Limits. If you want to send us a question, send us an email and get it read on the show at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. You can find the entire episode archive at elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com or on your favorite podcast service. If we aren't on your preferred podcast app, let us know, and we'll do our best to get on it. Thanks as always for supporting us here at Elwood City Limits. Now, back to the show.
Thank you, Lucas. Good to have your voice on here, even if you're not here. All right, JV and me, we're going to be talking about the second half of this episode, which is The Big Dig. So this was one where I really didn't know what it was. And then as soon as it started, not only did I remember what it was, but I was like, uh-oh, this one isn't going to be as happy-go-lucky as the other one.
Yeah, full disclosure, when I saw The Big Dig as one of the episodes that I was supposed to watch, I assumed that it would be the one where they're
dig up the
digging
lawn?
up in the yard, with the digestive biscuits.
Yes.
No, I was just saying, I guess I was saying that, I was expecting that. And so when the episode started and they're talking about Grandpa Dave, I was just like, oh man, it's this episode. I don't think that I was in, the proper mindset to be prepared for this particular episode, to be honest.
It's a little bit of an emotional whiplash because it's like the cold open is Arthur and DW talking about how much they love Grandpa Dave, and essentially that he is become this mythical figure of like childhood wonder. For Arthur, it's like he imagines Grandpa Dave coming and just like it's like, hey, it's my favorite grandson. Let's go on an adventure and let's not bring DW. And DW imagines him as like this boundless energy, like he just keeps playing horsey with her. He's like, I could do this for hours, DW. And they just have this wonderful imagination of him and how much they love him and all this kind of stuff. And then it immediately, we get the cold water of the beginning of the actual episode where Grandpa Dave is asleep on the couch. And then DW's like, Mom, when is Grandpa Dave going home? He's already been here a week. And the kids are sick of him. Because apparently all he does is sleep and play checkers, and not even particularly a good game of checkers.
Man, this whole episode, it definitely hits you in the feels. But I think this opening sequence in particular just really messed me up because you have, Grandpa Dave's grandchildren just, essentially talking poorly about their grandpa and how he just doesn't have any energy and he's no fun to be around and he's basically a shell of the man that he used to be. And we pan over slightly and we see in the door frame, it's Grandpa Dave just listening to all of this just with an earshot. And honestly, that sequence, it really did break me a little bit. Because, we can get a little personal, but I'm lucky to have, I guess, one set of grandparents left, but I also know that I guess that their time is a little limited as well. Mm-hmm. What's your grandparent situation like? Do you have any left?
I do not. I lost my. No, it's all right. I lost my grandparents at a pretty early age, so I've gone through a lot of my life without them. The only one that I was really close to was my grandmother. The only one I was really close to was my grandmother on my mother's side, and she died when I was, I want to say, like 11 years old or something like that.
That's tough.
But I imagine, like, I do have older relatives, and I imagine that if you're the type of person that has a really solid relationship with an older relative, then this might be a situation that seems kind of familiar. We even get a little bit of it where, the kids are complaining about grandpa, and it also reminded me of the imposition of, having relatives over to your house, and then they have to sleep on the fold-out couch in the TV room, which means you can't use the couch and you can't watch TV as much as you want to. So I identified with that very little kid problem. That was familiar to me.
It's interesting because I think that they did like a good job in this sequence at depicting, I think, how a child would react to this kind of a situation, because they're not fully cognizant of what's going on. And so their reactions are more so tied to, like you said, like they're not able to watch TV, their grandpa's no fun to be around, et cetera, et cetera. I do know that if this was my family, my mom would have gone off on me for saying such things, for sure. So, again, I think I definitely applaud Jane's patience in this entire episode, because, man, it's her dad, right? It's her dad that's going through the ringer right now,
Yeah.
And it's just, man, it's just so tough. It's weird. Okay. We're just gonna jump into it. We've kind of stirred up the emotions, but my wife and I, just after we got engaged, we went to India for my cousin's engagement. In India, Indian culture, engagements are a really big deal too. So their engagement was almost as big as a wedding bigger than a wedding, honestly, for a lot of folks. So it was a very big deal. But we also made sure that when we had some time, we went and brought my fiance over to my grandparents' place. And it's just one of those things where I know, I know that when I left that house, that I probably wouldn't be seeing my grandpa again. Mm. And that's just like, I think that's probably one of the reasons why, like, I felt like I had more of an emotional effect than I would care to admit from an Arthur episode, especially at this beginning, is because, man, it's just so tough. And just kind of seeing my mom just trying to weather the storm a little bit and be torn between whether she's going to, sacrifice her life here to make sure that she's able to spend, whatever moments she has left with her parents in India. Like, it's just a lot to consider, and just a lot of emotions, I think, to really juggle. And I feel like this episode, it did a good job of kind of, I think, describing some of those emotions subtly so people who are maybe older can relate, but also framing it in a way where kids can really, I guess, feel right in and almost kind of open their eyes a bit into a situation that honestly I think a lot of kids aren't really prone to understand.
Yeah, it's like the best Arthur episodes, it takes on a new dimension the older you get. And thank you for sharing that anecdote, by the way. That couldn't have been easy to deal with. And I feel like a lot of us, at least I'm sure some of our listeners have gone through something like that as well. Excuse me. There's a point where mom is kind of intercepting the kids' complaints and just saying, I know that Grandpa Dave isn't as energetic as he used to be, and he needs the couch because he can't manage the stairs. And it's just like, the first time we saw Grandpa Dave, first couple times, he was a very, very spry older guy. He had a lot of spirit to him. He seemed like a very physically active guy, and now we really see him more as like his age. So it's a bit hard to reconcile, and it seemed to be a really negative surprise for the kids as well. And we did say that, like, Grandpa Dave loves playing checkers, but the problem with playing with him, as Arthur notes to Buster, is that Grandpa Dave falls asleep after every move, and Arthur has to continue waking him up, so the checkers games take forever.
Yeah. I will say, we talked a bit about continuity in Just Desserts, and I think they did a good job with continuity here again, because even on Grandpa Dave's old farm, we sort of see the signs that Grandpa Dave is slowly slipping away from the person that he used to be.
Right.
Right. I think that I remember very clearly. Of course, there's the whole ordeal with the chicken coop, and just how long it took them to accomplish that one task. And they were able to accomplish that one task together. But even Jane notes at the end of that episode, well, geez, Dad, there seems like there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, right? And you see like the house that's just dilapidated and falling apart. And so it's cool to see that the writers are able to kind of take that concept, I guess, take that breadcrumb that they kind of sprinkled in at the end of Grandpa Dave's old farm, and carry it on into the future to now where it really has gotten to the point where Grandpa Dave, I don't think, is capable of taking care of the farm by himself by any means. And he needs, he needs so much assistance just to really keep going.
Yeah, you're right about that. During one of those checkers games that DW and Arthur really try to avoid, they try to think of excuses, but something falls out of Grandpa Dave's pocket. I keep wanting to call him Grandpa Thora because I'm used to saying that more. Something that Arthur looks at, and it looks to be a map of some sort, like almost like a pirate's map. And they kind of question him about it, and he's like, "Oh no, it's not something for little kids." And DW says, "I'm a grown-up in spirit. Mom says so." So,
and
yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. That part when Arthur says, "I am a big kid. I'm 8 years old," and I'm just thinking, "Damn, am I really 2 decades older than Arthur now? God,
yeah,
where did the time go?"
You and me both, brother. We're old enough. We're old enough in a certain scenario. We could be Arthur. We're old enough to be Arthur's dad. Not in our current, in our current scenarios, mind you. But if we did a little bit of that teen mom thing.
Okay, you need to chill right now. Okay, I can't even think about that right now. Okay, I'm not ready to have a little Arthur Munchkin of myself. And that's one thing too, is I'm sure that one day I'll probably be a great dad. But I also know that right now when I think about having kids, if my wife came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm pregnant, we're gonna have a kid," I feel like I would be more terrified than elated. So that's how I know. Okay, maybe we should.
I don't think there's many parents who aren't terrified when they find out that that's where their life is going, no matter how prepared they are. So I don't know if that exactly is going to go away, but hey, I absolutely understand. We spent 10 minutes at the beginning of this episode talking about how great video games are. Do you think I'm ready for a child in any respect of my life?
Okay, so now that we're on this tangent, I will say, and I don't know if this is ethical or whatever, but part of me almost, when I'm raising, I think it'd be really cool if I was like raising my kids to do it in some sort of like a time loop fashion where I wouldn't give them the latest and greatest games right away, right? Or the latest and greatest movies right away. I feel like I'd want to, start them off like with old NES. So that was like their experience of like what a video game was at first. So they could appreciate those old games and slowly work them up, over the course of maybe like a year or two to the modern games. That's some Plato's Cave stuff, I know, but I feel like it would be kind of cool.
I mean, they're your hypothetical kids, so you can do whatever you like.
Are you gonna be the parent who like straps the kid in right away with a VR headset, and you're like, figure it out, have a great time?
Not necessarily. I think it's more like it reminds me of when I first started dating Jenna, and I was like, oh man, I made up a list of like, here's all the movies that we totally have to watch and all this kind of stuff, and all the video games I want to show you and all this kind of stuff. And then after a while, I just kind of realized that. And a while being like a couple of years, it's like she and by proxy the people who are going to be a part of my life, including any kids I'll have later, they're going to discover things on their own, and the important thing is to let them have their own discoveries, and then there will be times where you'll be able to kind of share with them the things that you love, and you always have to be ready for them to either maybe love it even more than you, or not love it as much as you do, in fact not love it at all. So it's an interesting plan, that's for sure, but I don't know if I would want to, necessarily give them a linear experience of, the evolution of things. I think it's absolutely worth it for them to kind of get immersed in their own culture, and then if they have questions about the ones that came before, I mean, that's what you and I are here for. So I think there's a lot to be said about letting them kind of come to things naturally. Because I think that will kind of foster their natural curiosity, because they'll have a million questions about a million things.
That's true. And I bet that at that point, technology is probably going to be such a huge part of our lives, like even more than it is right now, that it's probably inescapable for like a kid to kind of like live in like a little world where something like, say, an old Nintendo, like an old NES system was relevant. Like I bet all around them is going to be, so many vivid colors and animated figures and whatnot that they're probably already going to have a much higher bar than, say, what we had growing up.
100%. And there'll be a lot more access to a lot more different things, and it'll just be completely different than the way you and I grew up. So it's better to embrace that and let them have their own thing. At least that's what I think. So speaking of family, Grandpa Dave decides to tell Arthur and DW the story of their great uncle Blacktooth, who is apparently the roughest pirate who ever sailed the seven seas. And he got so rich with like gold doubloons and candy. Candy is another big export for him, or import, I should say. That he needed to bury it because his ship was overburdened. There's a part here where Blacktooth was apparently famous for like having terrible breath because he never brushed his teeth. And there's a part here where he's like, I'm the toughest pirate in all the seven seas, and then Arthur, like an episode of Adam Ruins Everything, comes up and says, "Actually, there are 11 seas, sir." And then Blacktooth uses smog with his breath, and it was super effective. Arthur is thrown off the boat and apparently just dies. It's like during a storm, so like Arthur's dead. Arthur's totally dead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Obviously, this is a reference to Blackbeard, right? Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie. Whenever he was going through his treasure hoard, I was thinking about the opening theme song for One Piece at the same time, right? But what I didn't realize was that Blackbeard is not a fictional character. This whole time, I've lived my entire life, honestly, until just a couple of hours ago when I looked it up myself. Blackbeard was a real person. He's an actual person, and they used that person to build stories like Treasure Island and things like that. Also, okay, while we're on it, pirate fact, most pirates in general didn't bury their gold. There's one pirate apparently who was known for doing it, and it was William something, and I don't think Blackbeard was necessarily associated with that either. But it's cool to see, I guess, like the concept that we have like this Blackbeard character and we have this other character who was known for burying their treasure, and we've kind of combined them together to create, I think, the mythos that is Blackbeard, and in this case, Blacktooth. So weird pirate facts, I guess, with JV.
Well, pirate facts are cool because it's almost hard to believe that this was ever like a part of human history. It feels like more an invention of the movies, but no, there is like truth being stranger than fiction here. So it's always interesting to learn about those types of people.
I don't know if you're following the news, but there's one particular island that's just in the Indian Ocean that is the last bit of humanity that is untouched by the modern world.
Yeah, I did
right?
hear about
North
this.
Sentinel Island. Yeah, and I'm just thinking like, wow, like it's crazy to think that there's some folks out here who I guess are still living in the old ways, if you will, right? Completely masked from the nuances of the modern world, and you read things like that, and you're just like, wow, life really is sometimes stranger than fiction. It's interesting.
Well, it's always amazing to come up to realize there are things you don't know that you don't know. So in this Blacktooth story, he has to bury all of his treasure, and Grandpa Dave says the nearest port was Elwood City. So here's another wrinkle, a new wrinkle in the location of Elwood City. A lot of our listeners have narrowed it down to places like Boston, Massachusetts specifically, those kind of places. But apparently, Elwood City is a port city. Now this is eventually what we discovered to be a fake story from Grandpa Dave. So he could just be putting them on, but maybe there's some truth to this. Elwood City is a port city.
I'm still going to stand by, I think, what Mark Brown said, that it was based on Erie, Pennsylvania, which is, I think, the town that he grew up in. So that's my best guess. But of course, I feel like the Elwood City of Mark Brown's universe and the Elwood City of the Arthur extended universe are maybe two different places.
Yeah, could be. Anyway,
Evergreen.
Just wanted to make sure I put that out there. And then Blacktooth couldn't find where he buried his treasure, and he died not knowing where it was. There's a scene here with old Blacktooth going around with one of his younger mates, I guess, and it's DW aged up as an adult in pirate garb. This is a look and a half. This is not just, we're not just talking Halloween costume. You could get away with this like going to the club or something. This is awesome. It's I'm not even really sure how to describe it. It's older DW, same hair, but with an eye patch, like a red shirt with the white pirate hatchings instead of like buttons or something, blue pants, and like tan, like almost look like boots, but they almost look like Uggs.
Yeah, I remember looking at this whole sequence at DW's stance and everything, and I was just thinking, man, she could definitely play the role of like a supervillain. Just, it's just slightly different. This whole episode's, again, like we said before, it's done a great job with these alternate costumes, and I think grown-up pirate overseer DW is no exception to this role.
So, Grandpa Dave says that the treasure's still hidden somewhere. And it is implied after this that it's like, well, he just made this up, and it will be confirmed later on. But Arthur and DW completely taken with this story. DW breaks into Arthur's room that night, and they talk about what they would do if they found the treasure. So Arthur would buy the theme park Wonder World and make it into Arthur's Wonder World. But then DW would use it for something even more creative. She would make her plastic unicorns real. And she even gets like a little tune that goes along with this. And I love the lyrics here. It's like, the lyric starts off with, you've always dreamed it, and with money, dreams come true. It's a childish understanding of money, but also like kind of true.
Yeah, I was thinking about the lyrics. I was like, man, this is, if it was tweaked to be slightly different, I could see this ditty being played in the world of BioShock. Honestly, I could. I really could.
A little bit. It is a little bit of a Randian philosophy of just like, if you have money, then you can be the greatest of them. You can be the Ubermensch.
A man chooses, a pony obeys.
So they conspire to get the map away from Grandpa Dave, and eventually they do. They kind of spirit it away. It was in the couch cushions, and a cameo here by the head of Clarissa, which I guess DW wasn't taking very good care of. So they find it, and they manage to track down where they think the treasure is supposed to be. And as they wait for Grandpa Dave to like go to a doctor's appointment, and then they do all of like the pace. They have to like walk so many paces this way, and DW is kind of like trying to walk, but she's being offset by the weight of the shovel that she's carrying, and she just falls over at one point and just kind of grumbles, "Stupid pirate."
Yeah, that part definitely was, I think, the bit of brevity that this episode needed for sure. Just a really nice light moment, especially again like what we were talking about before with some of the breadcrumbs to Arthur alluding to maybe some deeper, I guess, darker themes with Jane taking her dad to the doctor and whatnot. Definitely a good bit of reprieve.
And so they start digging where they think the treasure's supposed to be, but they dig like pretty much all day, and they don't find anything. And eventually Grandpa Dave comes to find them, and he admits that he just kind of made up the story. He was going to bury some candy for them to find later, but they got ahead of him. And they're both very upset by this. DW says, "You lied, Grandpa, you lied." And then they both go back to the house and start watching TV on the couch. And Arthur's like, "I don't care if Grandpa needs this. I'm watching Bionic Bunny." And DW's like, "Yeah, and I don't even like Bionic Bunny." But this is pretty much the end of the episode here. And I wonder, I know the episode's kind of started off on a little bit of a downer note, especially in light of kind of what you were talking about, JV. But this one ends on something a bit more heartwarming, where Grandpa Dave gifts DW and Arthur a gold compass that was given to him by his, like, was it his great-great-grandfather or something like that? Like a distant relation who was lost at sea once and used the compass to find his way back home. And Grandpa starts settling into this pretty interesting story about Matthew was his name, and kind of how he found himself to be trapped out on the water. And Arthur, who was originally watching Bionic Bunny, he like pointedly looks at the remote and then turns off the TV because he's too busy listening to his grandpa. And so in a way, Grandpa has managed to gain back some of the favor that he kind of lost at the beginning of the episode just by being himself, essentially.
Yeah, and that's really nice too. I remember one part earlier in the episode after Arthur and DW are so taken in by the fake story that he made. I think Grandpa Dave says something to his daughter of the tune of, "Yup, looks like their number one favorite grandpa is back in business." And so it's cool to see, I guess, harken back to that. Only Grandpa Dave is able to do that through the stories that he has that are honest and that true bit of history. And it's great to see that the kids have grown to appreciate, I think, a new facet of their grandfather that maybe they hadn't before, right? Like when we think about at the very beginning of the episode, how they each picture Grandpa Dave, it's all about the adventures that they'll go on together, all about the endless energetic horsey rides. And now it's interesting, I guess, to see that I think the kids have gone to be accustomed to the new dynamic that they have with their grandfather, and are actually appreciating him for who he is now and not just longing for who he used to be.
Yeah. And it can be a lot to take in as somebody older watching it, but it is a very nice kind of sentiment to end off the episode with. So let's talk about the episode a little bit more in detail here. Let's go back to Just Desserts. What did you make of this one, JV?
I thought it was a really fun watch, to say the least. I had a great time with it. There were plenty of laughs. The alternate costumes were so incredible. And I think I really appreciated a lot of the world building that they did using the scope of Arthur. Like you said before, one of my favorite parts is the entire Red Riding Hood sequence, because we assume that this is all taking place at first in this fairy tale land, and to see it actually go to Elwood City proper, and to see Arthur, in the world right in front of the sugar bowl with Binky standing to make a couple jokes at him, and then running actually to his grandmother's house. I thought all that was really, really interesting and really well done. The ending, I think, was not necessarily the strongest, but overall, I had a really good time with the episode, and I had a lot of laughs and a lot of appreciation for just the alternate costumes and whatnot.
I agree. I think this is a really great episode. One of the best of the season. It's got such a terrific energy. There's not a lot of high stakes things that are happening. It's just kind of a fun little aside, but there's a lot of just life in and spirit into what's going on. It's especially when you started off with like, oh yeah, Arthur's jonesing for this cake, and I'm like, man, I'm jonesing for that cake. It sounds delicious. But it's just like, okay, Arthur has this really childish and silly plan that backfires, and then we kind of get the added dimension of putting fairy tales into the mix, and Arthur's take on fairy tales, which is actually like pretty cool. Like their take on fairy tales is funny. It's it uses the capital of the Arthur universe, the characters and the settings and everything, and it uses them very well. It even kind of pushes back in a metatextual kind of way with the Binky part of just like where the idea of the fairy tale just kind of goes away for a second for the sake of comedy, and I think that works incredibly well. And yeah, the fairy tale parts, which make up the bulk of the episode, are just super entertaining. They're like at times just hilarious and just very imaginative and fun. And so that's pretty much the meat of the episode. But it's real grade A meat. So I really enjoyed this. It's funny. It's really cool to look at, especially some of the designs and like how some of the animators had to draw like the candy house and the candy mall and all that kind of stuff. I think that a lot of good work really went into this, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, especially from a writing perspective, I think that this is definitely one of the strongest episodes from a writing standpoint, right? I feel like the writers did in addition with the animators, they did a really great job of just squeezing out the most that they can from pretty much every bit of dialogue. Like it felt like pretty much every piece had like some sort of gag or at least a setup to some kind of joke within it. Whether, like you said before, it was the Babe reference at the beginning or the Pee Wee Herman reference, or even just a little quick take to Arthur saying, well, maybe I'll just have one little piece. To DW immediately is like, why'd you eat two pieces? You know, it was good. Just really well done from a writing standpoint.
And as for the Big Dig, I'd say it's not quite on the level of Just Desserts, but because I don't think the story 100% comes together here. It's not like I didn't take as many notes for this one just because, the point A to point B storytelling is not like the super tightest or anything, but it kind of doesn't have to be, because what really works for this is the sentiment behind the episode. And it's really about the kid's relationship with Grandpa Dave and the lengths he'll go to kind of get back in their favor again. And I really think it didn't resonate with me personally, but I can see where it would for another viewer with a different relationship with an older relative or with their grandparents, as you yourself were mentioning, JV. So I can really appreciate the efforts. I think the little part in the middle with Blacktooth was pretty fun, and I think it ends well too. It's just a nice little story, and I'm very happy to see Grandpa Dave again. I've loved episodes with him in the past, and I think this one is very good too. It's not the best of the season, but it is still, it's up there. It's really good.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that, when we talk about Just Desserts, what we really appreciate is just how much was packed into the writing, the animation, the sequences that were crafted in that all together were just so imaginative and so creative and just so well done. And, the Big Dig, it doesn't necessarily have any of that. But I think what it certainly does have in spades is quite a bit of emotional depth. That I don't think I fully appreciated as a kid, but I really do appreciate now that I'm much older, to say the least. I think that personally speaking, I think this, and I might be biased, especially given the time frame that I am in personally with my life. But I think that from an emotional perspective, it was one of the better done episodes, I think, in Arthur so far. Just at capturing, I guess, some of the subtleties that go on whenever you do have an older relative that is aging and slowly getting and transforming transforming away from a place where maybe someone was so used to knowing them your entire life and coming to terms with accepting them now for who they are and appreciating, I'd say, the time that you have with them as well as who they are and just how much wisdom that they still have to impart on you. So I think I definitely liked this one more than you, but I will agree that Just Desserts is definitely the stronger of the pair of episodes here.
And I can see a lot of people saying the same thing as you, JV, just because it didn't, touch my heart. It's it's not like for me it's like every time they bring up the, Buster and his mom kind of the divorce angle with things, that's something I can more relate to. Just because I can't relate to this doesn't mean that it doesn't work very, very well, which it does. So, again, great pair of episodes here. And that's going to... oh, man. My poor voice. I'm going to...
You're sounding like Grandpa Dave a little bit. You can't go well. You got too much to live for.
I sure do. I got to drink a lot of water. So we're going to have to wrap this one up here. But JV, it's been great having you on again. And I imagine in a few weeks to a month, we'll be hearing from you again. And we're going to need all of your esports expertise when we're talking about the best of the nest.
Oh, I am so ready, right? I feel like this episode, it definitely was a bit more mellow, especially towards the latter half of it. But I can already just see the conversation that you, me, and Lucas are going to be having in a couple weeks. And I am stoked, all right? I can see some anime, some hip-hop, Definitely a lot of video game talk, to see the least. And I'm definitely stoked to be circling back with y'all in a couple of weeks. It's going to be great.
And the next time that Lucas returns to the show, very soon, we hope. He's been buried with school, so he's going to be free again very soon. We're going to be doing some fun stuff, and including ending off Season 5 of Arthur, the final episode of the season, Arthur's Family Feud, and Muffy Gets Mature. And we've got some fun stuff coming up for December in the pipeline as well. I will also say that if you want to, I would recommend that sooner rather than later, okay? You go to soundcloud.com/Elwood City Limits and you check out the Arthur's Perfect Christmas commentary, because that's not going to be around for free for too much longer, okay? So get your Christmas viewing in real soon, and you can check out me and Lucas doing some commentary of Arthur's Perfect Christmas. And, yeah, JV, do you have anything that you would like to plug before we get out of here?
Feel free to check me out on Twitter at jvarg1990. I'm also going to be streaming a bit on Twitch as well. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I have a nice backlog of games that I'm slowly working through. So if you want to watch me catch up on some indie games and whatnot, and just talk a lot about esports and whatnot, feel free to follow me on Twitch at /jvarg1990 there as well.
All right, I should really be doing that too. By the way, we need to add each other on PlayStation as well, just so we can
Yes.
get some Overwatch or something going soon enough. My name's Will Young. For this episode of Elwood City Limits, I want to say thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you in December. And for JV,
the better to be eaten by you!
we'll catch you next time.